I wanted to take some time today to honor the life of a man who was such an original, such a fascinating guy. Didn't care what anyone thought of him, was just himself, which I think is an awesome quality in a human being. Of course, talking about Mississippi State football coach Mike Leach, who was also the football coach for a long time at Washington State University. A very dear friend of mine, Jessamyn McIntyre, has been the sideline reporter for the Washington State Cougars for a long time, was there while Mike Leach was the head coach, and she joined me to talk a little bit about her memories of him and his legacy. Jess, thanks for coming on. I know that Coach Leach meant a lot to you personally and professionally. What did he mean to you? What did he add to your life?
Well, I was saying this earlier this week, and thank you for having me to honor him, that he made everyone around him better at what they do because he was constantly challenging people. And one of the things that I think got mischaracterized in viewing him from the outside and what became so much public is you'd see him challenging people. And sometimes people thought he was rude or mean to me when all he was doing was making me better. And he wasn't even harsh about it. He was so funny with that. And our relationship developed. I started at Washington State in 2012, which was his first year here. So I had 8 seasons with him, and the most consistent interaction with him in a sideline reporting role. And he would jokingly say how he was so mad that we had gone wireless because he used to like to run to the locker room and get reporters' wires tangled up in the players so they couldn't catch him. And it was this spectacle it became of halftime of me running with him and trying to box him out of his own locker room so that I could get my 2 questions in right beforehand. But the friendship that we developed and his care for everyone around him and his desire to see the best in them, all of those things just added up to someone who became a friend of mine. And, I had texted with him earlier this season even, and he kept saying, I have to get down to a Mississippi State game. And I was like, Coach, you do understand that I still work for Washington State and our seasons are at the same time. But everything that he would say was just, you have to, we got to get together. If I was in Florida and he was in Key West, come down to mile marker 1. You'll have a great time. You're going to love it. And so he meant more as a person even than a football coach to me.
Well, I remember, because obviously we've been friends that whole time, and I remember you talking to me that first season, like this man is making me sprint. Yep. And you kind of, and maybe you can articulate it, but you were like determined to be step for step with him, even if you were like full speed. You were like, I'm not going to let him not let me get this interview.
Yeah, it was a chess match. He was always playing chess with people, no matter what it was, and that is it. So he would sprint, and if he was upset at halftime, that was it directly correlated with his speed. So we were down 20-10 at halftime and Stanford, and I remember this, and I would I would kind of block him and get ready, and he just sprinted right by me, and I literally full speed, which didn't sound great on the radio, by the way, is me huffing away as I'm asking my questions. And it got picked up on television. I became a GIF and everything. And it was just so funny. And I never missed out on one of those interviews over, 12 plus games a year. And over 8 years, I got him every single time. And he would always tell me and tell television reporters that, you watch out for her. She's going to get you. And I'm like, no, Coach, I'm just going to get you. Just you.
You also obviously spent a lot of time talking to players during, and you still do, while doing sideline reporting at Washington State during the Leach era there. He is an odd duck, right? I mean, we cannot deny that he was just an odd man. What did the players think of him? Did they have a hard time, maybe even the younger players, trying to figure him out?
Yeah, I think those that embraced his style were the ones that stuck around when he was taking over for Paul Wolf, who was fired from the university. And so a lot of the players, when that happens, they had a relationship and were recruited by the previous coach. So their styles were extremely different. But those who knew him and embraced his style they got better and better. One of the things that Coach Leach does with recruiting is he recruits for the ceiling of players, not, these, 4 or 5 stars. I mean, it would be nice to get them every single year, but he saw potential. And and the players saw it right back in him. And they also appreciated everything that he saw in them, and they worked harder for him. He was tough. He was abrasive. If you see those, things that get picked up on TV and the speeches that he's given, I mean, I know they're always great figuring him out, but I think almost everybody could see the humor that he had, even in times where he wasn't necessarily being jovial.
Yeah, I saw a clip and I wasn't familiar enough with the clip to know if it was taken out of context, but he's folding up chairs on the sideline and throwing them down. Do you know the context behind that clip?
I forget which unit it was on the team, whether it was offensive or defensive, but he was asked about it and said, if you're not going to play hard, then you don't get to sit. And he was very upset with either the line, the wide receivers. I forget who it was because it wasn't a game I was covering. I think that was at Mississippi State, or it was. And that was what he said. You're not going to play hard, you don't get to sit.
Yeah, it was this weird combination of he was hard, but it always came like, that's funny. You can't watch that and not think it's kind of funny. And he just seemed like a guy who genuinely did not care what anyone thought of him.
He didn't, but he loved to entertain at the same time. He is not naive to the fact that that is funny. I know that for sure. He never was. Just not knowing when he was being entertaining. And I used to tell television reporters when they'd have production meetings with him, get him going. And if he makes you laugh, he's going to talk for 30 minutes more than you think he is, because he loves to entertain people. And I've sat in on a few of those production meetings, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, and I played earlier before we started just some of the infamous clips of him, the wedding advice, which you and I are both planning weddings, so we'll have to make sure our fiancés see the wedding advice. What kind of gems of wisdom did you take from Mike Leach?
Not taking yourself too seriously, which is something that I absolutely have to continue to work on throughout my personal and professional life, but understanding when it's okay to laugh. And laugh at yourself. But then, his stream of consciousness and everything, it's okay to just say what's on your mind. He's also a kind person. And I think one of the consistent stories that I've always heard about him before I knew him and after he left Washington State is that he would have time for everyone. And some reporters might take issue with me saying that because he was consistently late to every single press conference he ever held. But that's because he got caught up talking with the guy who was delivering the coffee beans to the office. And he wanted to know everything about where were these beans grown and, all these different things. And everybody would love a half-hour conversation with Coach Leach. And he gave it to anyone who was willing to engage in one. I mean, you hear it from people from the top levels of any school he's worked at to the people he would meet at a Key West bar during the off season when he would spend time there. The guys that would take him out on fishing expeditions to the guys who were emptying his trash can, is that he really saw everyone as a human.
If you could say what college football has lost with the passing of Mike Leach, how could you characterize that?
Well, they only made one of him. So you lost Mike Leach. But in a broader scheme of things, even in college football, the air raid offense, which he, refined in his own head coaching career, but did so with the help of learning under his mentor, Hal Mumme. The air raid offense is something new, and it was not very typical of college football programs. And it's something that will live on beyond him, but to lose one of the pioneering engineers of that offense, just from the football side of it, is something that will be missed. I just think that we lost someone in everything that I've said who knows how to take a breath and doesn't care what people think about him. And someone who would infuse humor into everything. There's almost every weekend you'll get something out of him. Person that just knew how to care about every single human he came into contact with. And there's probably a million different things that I could say, but those are the ones that made him special. And you'll never get a post-game top of mind random rant like you did with Mike Leach.
And on a more personal note, I guess we'll end here. You've lost two, really important mentors to you recently. Mike Leach, obviously, and the professor, John Clayton. You were also very close with him. I know I've talked to you about it many times. I know how difficult both those losses are, but these were both men who were mentors to you as a younger woman coming up in the sporting world and the profession. What would you say about the importance of kind of looking at people who are coming up and mentoring them and giving them time and giving them support?
I mean, it's immeasurable. It is so important. And to have men like that at their stature put their name on me and their trust in me and the different roles that I had with them professionally, it really elevated me at a time where I was still figuring things out, and it gave me confidence. And I will say that both of those people, while they're very, very different, had very different styles and different professions, did not see me as a gender. They saw me for what I did and the hard work that I put into the roles I participated in with them. And that's really important, especially for young people coming up. And that's not just women, but in a male dominated industry, it made an extreme amount of difference. And, it comes down to simple things like access and people saying, oh, yeah, yes, you should be here. That person put their name on you. Okay. It opens doors. And while I do put in hard work, you really need someone to give the confidence in you. And sometimes those doors need to be open for you to be able to run through them. And I had mentioned this to you prior to doing this interview, that I met Gary O'Hagan, who was John Clayton and Mike Leach's agent. And I met him at John Clayton's memorial this past summer. He talked to Mike Leach every single day, and he was crestfallen. And while we were texting back and forth, we were still talking in present tense, not like he was gone. And just he really just showed me how special of a man Mike was. And the last text that Gary had sent me, which is really when it hit me like a ton of bricks, was, Jessamyn, Mike really liked you. He talked about you for a good half an hour after I told him that we got to meet, and he was so excited to hear how you are. And I think that Mike Leach, for people he respects, that's how he's going to act.
Yeah, and at the very core, he's such an example of just being a good person. And as you said it, could not have said it better, just seeing everyone as a human being. He wasn't a perfect person, but he was just, I think, an example for anyone. So Jessamyn, again, so sorry for the loss of another friend of yours. And I appreciate you taking the time to come on and tell us about what he meant to you and what he meant to the rest of the world.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the platform to honor him.
Just a really tragic loss of such a fascinating man. Again, Mike Leach, Mississippi State head football coach, former coach for the Washington State Cougars, but so much more than that, an all-around interesting man, a good man, dead at the age of 61 of a heart attack.